Please.
We're now live.
Yeah. I'll just wait for it to click over on my screen to 6 o'clock. Well, thank you, everybody. My name is Dean Rees. I'm the Mayor of the Rural City, and I'm coming to you from Katherine in the Northern Territory tonight. I wanted to be part of this meeting, as all meetings I like to be a part thereof. I may have trouble in hearing on occasions here or acknowledging the votes. My Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bustle, will do so on my behalf if I miss anything. Thank you, Councillor Bustle. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to make an acknowledgement of our traditional owners. So we acknowledge the traditional owners on the land on which we are meeting. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and also elders from other communities who may be here today with us. Thank you, and I'd like to also acknowledge our gallery for being with us today. Thank you. Could we all please stand for the prayer? Almighty God, we humbly ask Thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations so that we may preserve the welfare of the people from whom we serve. Amen. Thank you. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All councillors and corporate management team are here today. Just quickly, we haven't done this for a while, but I'm going to go around the room. We've had a few changes in our corporate management team and name structure. I'm going to start with Marcus Goonan, Stephen Swart, and then across to Sarah for your the structure of within the organisation that you represent. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, Dean. Marcus Goonan, so I am the Director of Community and Infrastructure.
Stephen Swart.
Thank you, Dean. I'm Stephen Swart. I'm the Director of Sustainability and Culture.
Sarah, please.
I am Sarah Brindley, Director of Corporate and Leisure.
Thank you very much. Obviously, all councillors are here, and I'll go on to item number 7, and I'll look to Harvey Benton for confirmation here. Harvey, the minutes from our previous council meeting.
Yes.
There's no apology to noting Irene Green's attendance, not attendance.
Exactly. I noticed in the minutes that I was marked as absent, which is not technically correct because I was an apology. So I wish to be noted as an apology.
I'll move that, put that amendment to the minutes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. Can I have a second for that? Yes, thank you, Thank you, Harry. Councillor Fitzpatrick, I did see your hand there, Councillor. Are there any questions or any further from any councillor? No? All those in favour? And that recommendation is carried. There's no conflict of interests from any of the councillors here tonight on any of the issues that we're representing tonight. There's no reflections or petitions or deputation. So, ladies and gentlemen, in councillor reports, I'd just like to bring something up. I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Ashley Fitzpatrick for being here tonight and also at our briefing on Monday and being involved in council things towards the end of last week. She had a very, very close friend of hers, Nathan Gottschling, suddenly passed away. I'd like to pay my respects to the Gottschling family and also thanking Councillor Fitzpatrick for putting her duty as a councillor here tonight and she's very, very close friends with this young man and his family, and we thank you for being part of it, but mainly to pay our respects to Nathan and Nathan's family. Thank you. We will move on to executive services. Sorry, we'll move on to item number 14 as we go down our agenda to corporate services, and we'll talk at 14.1, which is our budget for 2022-2023, and I'll hand over to Director Brindley.
Thank you, Mayor. Just before I start on this, just for people in the gallery, I've just been informed that our front door isn't working automatically, so when you come to leave, press the green button on the side and you'll be able to get out of the building, and we'll just put a sign up for you, just to make you aware of that.
Or just find a warm, comfortable place to sleep.
Stay for the night. All right, thank you. So 14.1 is the budget for the 2022-23 financial year. This report's presented to Council to consider adopting the budget following a period of community consultation. We received 27 submissions from the public, 5 of those who requested to be heard by councillors, and the resulting recommended actions and changes to the budget are listed in attachments 2 and 3. Principally $10,000 of funding for Startup Shake-Up, and also an adjustment to proposed charges at the Wangaratta Aerodrome to continue to attract weekend traffic and parking for planes at the aerodrome. The councillors will speak in more detail about the highlights of the budget, so I'll hand over to them to do that. But just procedurally, so officers believe all the necessary feedback and work has been completed now on the budget, and it's ready for councillors to adopt. I won't read through the entire recommendation here, you can see it in the report, but essentially the recommendation is that Council considers the submissions made to the budget and the proposed changes, notes those changes to the 2022-23 draft budget, including an increase to operating income and grant funding by $0.47 million, an increase to operating expenses by $0.66 million, and an increase to capital works expenditure by $4.27 million. And the details of that are included in the report. To declare the rates and charges for the 2022-23 financial year, to adopt the 2022-23 budget, and then to authorise formal responses to be sent to each of the submitters and for the CEO to give notice of the adoption of the budget, which will be published on Council's website. Thank you, Mayor Rees.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions from the gallery? No, thank you. That's a good sign. So I'd like to move the recommendation as the Mayor, accept the budget. Can I have a seconder, please?
Councillor Irene Grant.
Thank you, Councillor Irene Grant, as a seconder. Councillors to talk. I will talk first on the budget, and then I will ask my fellow councillors to talk if they so desire. So firstly, I'd like to thank our Interim Finance Manager, Mike. Mike's only been here for a short time, had to get his head around this budget in a very, very quick manner, and he has done that for the 22-23 budget, and we respect him doing that. So ladies and gentlemen, the 2022-23 budget reflects a time of recovery, stabilisation and growth for our community, as we continue to transition out of the social and economic challenges presented to us throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. This new budget also continues to fund delivery of the actions we committed to in the 4-year council plan we adopted last year to help make our community aspirations a reality and to bring council delivery commitments to life. The 2022-23 budget allocates pragmatic funding to ensure delivery of the key projects on the path ahead. We'd like to thank the community members who contributed their ideas and feedback during the public consultation period. We received, as Sarah said, 27 submissions and met a number of submitters who requested to present directly to all of us councillors. It is not always possible to include requests from all groups, and this budget is no exception. But let me tell you, we did listen, but we have actively listened to this to make sure that Council's Community Grants program is now an appropriate source of funds for 6 of these community requests, and the next application round is anticipated to open in August. We will continue to lobby for funding assistance from both state and federal, and that's not just by giving them a call, it's by getting in the car, going to Canberra, going to Melbourne, as we've done in the past. We also received 7 submissions regarding the proposal to introduce parking fees for planes. Again, as Sarah just mentioned, at the aerodrome, we have listened to your feedback, we've modified the charges. As part of this action, the first 3 days of parking will be free to continue to encourage weekend visitation in Wangaratta and its surrounds. Key figures from the 22-23 budget are $33.07 million new capital works program. This includes 41, which is inclusive in the whole amount of 41.42 with carryovers from the previous year. We have a 1.75% rate rise in line with the Fair Go system rate cap imposed by the Victorian Government. We have accounting surplus of 17.96 million, an adjusted underlying operating deficit of 1.84 million, and we have no new borrowings. A key feature of this budget is the 41.42 capital works program, which will deliver transformational projects such as, if accepted by our councillors tonight, and I will say that, of the Wangaratta Sports and Aquatic Centre Stadium and Gym, the continuation of major multi-year projects including the Ned Kelly Heritage Project and of course the King Valley Prosecco Road Project. As these projects progress, our focus is to ensure they will contribute meaningful to the economic growth of the municipality for years to come, in addition to providing improved social strength and health outcomes for our community. My fellow councillors will tell you more about this as these projects are coming on, and they will talk to you more about some of these shortly. Ongoing volatility is expected in the Capital Works program with the continuing shortage of contractors and materials anticipated to impact delivery timelines and costs. Council will continue to actively monitor and adjust capital work schedules as necessary to maximise the delivery capacity. The 22-23 budget reflects our commitment to providing sustainable, contemporary, community-focused services and to maintain the critical infrastructure and facilities that house these services across the municipality. The rural city of Wangaratta Council maintains a network of sealed and unsealed roads covering 1,978 kilometres of that, 446 bridges and culverts and 277 kilometres of walking and cycling tracks, 39 playgrounds, in addition to 150 council buildings and facilities, 96 sporting and playing fields, 4 waste transfer stations, 26 community halls, the Wangaratta Sports and Aquatic Centre and Performing Arts Centre, the Art Gallery, and of course the library. To this end, renewal expenditure totals 10.65 million, which will include 4.18 million on road renewal and 2.09 million on plant and equipment renewal. Council has been extremely successful in attracting grant funding for key projects, making ratepayers' money work even harder for the municipality. Major projects for funding for the 2022-23 financial year includes, example, extensions to the Wangaratta Sports and Aquatic Centre of 11.65 million with 5.3 million of grant funding, again, upon approval of this budget tonight. Improvements to the Parkland precinct to enable council to act as a major evacuation centre during emergency events throughout the northeast Victoria, 1.99 million, 2.04 million over 2 years, fully grant funded. Prosecco Road Development Master Plan of 4 million over 2 years, fully funded. And again, the Ned Kelly Heritage Project, $5.3 million project with $2.7 million grant funding over 3 years, of which the final 2.63 billion delivery will occur in the 2022-23 year. The modest rate cap increase of 1.75% as the Victorian Government Fair Go system applies, and this helps to apply pressure to the organisation's financial positions, given the far greater costs of inflation for materials and services affecting us all. Council has undertaken thorough reviews of all of our service areas and reduced 2022-23 expenditure where possible to compensate this. This project is the fiscal stability of the rural city of Wangaratta while ensuring the continued provision of essential services that will support ongoing economic and social recovery of our community. In relation to rates, I would like to raise awareness of an unprecedented increase in capital improved property value in the municipality of around 28.9%. Property valuations are undertaken independently of council under the instruction of the Victorian Valuer General. With such significant valuation increases from 2021 levels, there will be a redistribution of rates. The total increase in rates revenue to council remains at the 1.75. However, some ratepayers will see a more substantial increase in their rates, whilst others will see a substantial decrease. We plan on providing further communication in August when rate notices are raised, including details of financial hardship support available to provide short or long-term rate assistance through payment arrangements. The curbside recycling and organic collection charge represents a fee for service, and the increase of 6% for garbage collection are in direct response to cost increases. In particular, the state government has imposed a landfill levy has increased from $52.95 a tonne to $62.95 a tonne. This is an increase of some 18.9%. The recycling charge also represents additional processing costs. Council continues to apply an additional $15 rebate for those eligible for a pension rates concession following the increased cost of the recycling service charges. Overall, the 2022-23 budget demonstrates our ongoing commitment to service, planning and business improvement. We strive to achieve excellence for the community through the decisions we make and the services we deliver, and look forward to working with our community on delivering these exciting projects. I would like to thank and commend my fellow councillors for their efforts and the constructive debates we've had on creating this budget. I would also like to acknowledge the efforts of our CEO, the senior management team, the finance team, as I mentioned Mike there before, for all the hours and effort that put into this budget is greatly appreciated. I commend the 2022-23 budget for your consideration and for councillors for your adoption here tonight. Thank you. I'd now like to take over to my Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bussell. Would you like to talk on some items on the budget, Harry?
Just a point of order there, Mr Mayor. Councillor Grant seconded the motion.
I think I did say that, didn't I?
Yep.
Yeah, but that's okay. Councillor Grant still doesn't have to talk second. Only the person that moves the motion talks first. Thank you, Councillor Bussell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. King Valley has a reputation as a premier destination for Prosecco in Australia. This will be further enhanced by delivery of projects from both the Prosecco Road Master Plan and Rural Placemaking Program. These projects improve the amenity of the King Valley for the community and visitors alike. The 2022-23 budget includes a fully funded grant amount of $3.63 million, $4 million in total over 2 years, to help deliver an extremely exciting program that sets a vision and roadmap to develop the King Valley into a standout location for visitors to enjoy our beautiful region and the high quality hospitality we have to offer. This project will see development of a bike trail, township enhancements, streetscape upgrades, plus the installation of artworks and playground projects. To continue to improve the ease and attractiveness for travel and visitation across the region, we'll also be investing a further $57,000 for township entrance and signage improvements, and second year funding of $100,000 for Wangaratta Town Entry beautification improvements. Improving our physical wellbeing, particularly after the 2 years, and providing a community group with access to the facilities they need in another budget priority, the Wangaratta Sports and Aquatic Centre will receive major upgrades to its basketball courts and gym. This project was identified as a key element of the Parklands Precinct Master Plan. $11.65 million is allocated to this project next year, with $5.3 million grant funding from state government. It's so important to invest in our sporting facilities for our residents' health. This will be the stadium's first upgrade since 1976. The upgrade will help us attract major events and serve the growing health and recreation needs of our community for decades to come. Councillors are aware that there are several local townships requiring upgrades to their sporting facilities. We will continue to advocate to attract funding to facilitate future upgrades to these areas. I'm extremely pleased to confirm for the Mooryu community that $350,000 to upgrade the Mooryu Hall. It's well and truly overdue, and it's in the budget. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll just add Mr Mayor, I'll just add one more thing that I say every year. The cost of firewood has only gone up 50 cents. So $138 a year will heat a whole family's house with firewood. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bussell. I'm not sure how that fitted in there, but thanks for aligning your speech with your portfolio and your great southern land out there. Councillor Harvey Benton, have you got something to report?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. You did say some take a bit of my thunder in relationship to the emergency centre that you've already remarked about, and it is a very important part of the preparation and recovery phases of an emergency down there, and it will do good to make sure that the area does become more of a secure relief centre. The other part that is in probably the northern ward is in the township area of the city of Wangaratta is the improvement of the flood mitigation levy bank. And this has been funded by the state government ourselves and the federal government, I believe, and there's 1.5 million from our budgetary funds as well. And I think this work, if I'm correct, is over 2 years. We will also have in the budget is the infrastructure plans for Oralia and the implementation from the Everton and Tarrawinchi plans that have been done in previous years will be implemented. We continue to provide the rural quality of our roads, and I'm pleased to advise that we have 1.83 million put back into a resheeting of roads and gravel resheeting program. This is an increase. I think last year was around 1.6, and now it's gone up to 1.8 to make sure that we're able to keep some sort of a standard within our rural roads. Other investments in the reseal program is 850,000. There's 700,000 on bridge maintenance and 529 on improved pathways and cycleways. And I will say this one is probably a little bit of a minor, but to the community that have been waiting years to have a footpath, it's the Wilson Road construction, I believe, is included in that money for this year to take place. There is also a total of 3 million actually is on drainage to be done over the years, and I think it's one thing that's very important for road and not only road and infrastructure but sporting facilities as well, is to have an adequate and proper drainage system. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. Councillor Irene Grant, have you got something to report for or against the budget?
I do, and I think you painted an excellent picture earlier, Mr. Mayor, in presenting the budget to everyone. You certainly put the focus on some of the key initiatives that are part of the budget that we're going to hopefully pass tonight. One of the greatest challenges that we face as councillors is the framing of our budget and the long-term financial plan. And in that, I have to acknowledge the great work of the financial team and the council officers in the budget that we see here tonight. This budget maintains a strong focus on pursuing economic opportunities that will deliver on growth and improvement to the community. And as the Mayor mentioned earlier, one of the most important, certainly from my perspective, as part of my ward, will be the completion of the Ned Kelly Glenrowan Heritage Project. You know, the building, once erected, will look out over the key Glenrowan historical sites and provide an interpretation of the Ned Kelly story for those wishing to understand more about the history of the North, this important part of history in the North East. I think it's certainly worth mentioning that we continue to see the implementation of the marketing and branding strategy, $500,000 to promote and support businesses within the rural city of Wangaratta and surrounds. Something I don't believe we can drop the ball on. There is always something we can do and must do to further our position as a place to live, invest and visit. This allocation goes a long way to assisting our EcoDev team to support local businesses to meet the challenges that they're currently facing, and certainly after COVID and the impact that it's had on our businesses. In line with the actions that we have committed to in the council plan, the budget also provides for the implementation of the economic development and tourism strategy and the visitors services strategy. The last 2 years, and I've said this before and I think it really is worth saying again, the last 2 years have put a real strain on our resources and resourcing and making it more difficult to find any flexibility in the budget. Shortages in supplies, staffing events globally have had a huge impact and added to the pressures being faced by council and the finance team. I'm pleased to note that while there is money for new initiatives, and I think this is important to note, that there is also money for our core projects. And I think that's one of the great challenges that we face, that we have to be prudent as well as showing foresight. Not an easy task with so many competing demands and so many competing priorities. All of them are important. I'm also personally pleased, and I know that one of our councillors will talk on this as well, that there's an allocation of $1.2 million for the Creative Precinct Master Plan, and which is supported by grant funding. I really believe that this initiative has potential to put Wangaratta and its creative community on the map as a destination for exhibitions, workshop, and a myriad of other artistic activities. So the possibilities are endless. So I think this budget's I think something that's looked at initiatives. It's also looked at our core business, and I think given the challenges that we face, I think it's been a very well framed budget.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Jack Herry.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. Yeah, I definitely don't disagree with a lot of the comments that have been made so far, and it is a budget with a lot of positive aspects in it. I just too want to thank the staff, including the recent additions to the team, but also some who have departed recently, who put in a great deal of hard work into the preparation of the document. I just want to at the head say that while I am very supportive of the great majority of the budget, I am somewhat inclined to dissent in adopting the budget in its current form, and I'll take a moment to outline it shortly, but I just want to highlight that dissent's no reflection of staff's work and all the hard work that they've put in over the many months. I'll try and keep this succinct, but the specific area that I do take some issue with is that of the marketing and advertising allocation. It's a $500,000 sum that is allocated towards marketing and advertising campaigns. There are 3 campaigns: the Live, Visit and Invest. I'm not suggesting that it's a worthless pursuit, and I'm not suggesting that we would reduce that to nothing. However, I do believe it's a very generous, if not excessive in my opinion, spend in an area that's, I would suggest, is not a broad priority for our community. An area that I see is not seeing enough resources directed are those pertaining to climate change, both mitigation and adaptation, and expediting the organisation and community-wide actions in that space. There are numerous projects and initiatives that we have discussed around the table. For example, more recently, looking at surveying some of our buildings for remaining rooftop solar installations, which have a really good financial ROI in and of themselves. But a lot of these things just don't have funding. They're not secured in the long-term financial plan, and I know that's a document that has movement as we go through the years. However, I'm just concerned with all the cost escalations and various constraints that are always coming in, and constant competition, that things are getting tighter and tighter as we go into the 4 years. So I also just want to, highlight an inadequacy, in my opinion, of perhaps the allocation of resources to the staffing, the EFT, that a council of our size puts into the area of sustainability and climate mitigation and adaptation staffing. I think there's a number of projects, looking at our assets and trees. That we recently had the asset management plan, and having a really big, bold plan for urban greening strategy, committing some resourcing to better outcomes in planning, and perhaps advocacy in the planning space to the state government, and building, of course, higher degree of sustainability into our capital infrastructure projects, as well as a robust climate adaptation action plan. So I know a lot of those works will probably come in due course. However, and I don't want to discount a lot of the good work being done as well, mind you. There are, you know, rooftop solar installations coming which have good ROI, and there's the organics plan, which is a fantastic initiative and is being progressed with new equipment there to make that a bigger and better operation for our community. But I just feel there are a lot of projects that aren't in there yet, and there's a lot more scope for increasing the ambition there. So it's often stated budgets are a balancing act, but it doesn't come without a fair bit of jostling and competition between demands, and you balance away from things that are low priority and towards your higher priority areas. So I'm just afraid that on the balance of it all, this presents too much of an opportunity cost, I guess, is how I would put it. By pursuing the marketing and advertising, and I feel like there's a lot of pressing and urgent matters, particularly with climate and adaptation and mitigation, that we are forgoing the opportunity of pursuing. Thank you, Mayor Rees.
Thank you, Councillor Herry. I will now hand over to Councillor Ashley Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. I also just want to take a moment to also thank Claire and Chris for all their hard work that they've done with the budget. Budgets can be quite complex. We all have our own thoughts and priorities as to the community, so I really want to take the moment to say thank you to them. At Council, we're committed to ensuring we look after one another and that our community is provided with services and the support for those impacted by mental health challenges. At Council, we will continue to deliver the community-based Grit and Resilience program in partnership with the program consortium and advocate for continued funding with $391,000 allocated in this 22-23 budget. This is a hugely important program that supports the development and delivery for community-driven mental health and wellbeing projects and provides critical support to prevent those impacted by suicide. Council also has a role in supporting community groups who provide valuable physical, mental and social benefits to the municipality. And next year we'll again distribute $172,500 through the community grants program across funding streams of general access and inclusion, mental health and resilience and active Wangaratta. We will also provide a further $80,000 in investment in more substantial sponsorships for local organisations. We are dedicated to creating a safe, supportive and inclusive community for everyone to improve inclusion and equality. The budget provides operational funding to key council services to continue the implementation of our public health and wellbeing plan, the community access and inclusion plan, development of youth action plan and implementation of our gender equity action plan. Our young people are the future, and we will also be funding the upgrades of their services and facilities with $15,000 going to the Wangaratta Children's Services Strategic Plan implementation, $30,000 for their building improvements and $172,000 to the renewal of the Yarrunga Maternal Child Health Building and Place-based development. And lastly, for the comfort and safety of our children and their caregivers, we will invest $40,000 in the installation of shade sails at the Dodworth Street Playground at the Mitchell Park Avenue Splash Park, which is fantastic.
Thanks, Ash. That was a great report there. Thank you for informing us on that few things I've forgotten about. Councillor Dave Fuller, always love to hear you last, mate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and you'll get the right reply, so you'll be last, potentially. Throughout the budget process, I wish to thank CMT for giving us all the opportunity to stand up for the priorities that we look to hear from our communities, and as a group of 7 work towards putting into these budgets. As a community, we celebrate creativity from nationally acclaimed performances at our PAC through to our Wangaratta Contemporary Textile Award, which touches on our rich tapestry, pun intended, of textile history throughout the community. The budget allocates funding to progress the design and pursuit of further funding for the Creative Precinct, as Councillor Grant mentioned, including a $1.2 million allocation for development and then implementation of the initial stages of the Creative Precinct. The Wangaratta Art Gallery continues to receive funding and will do so to provide exhibition lighting and accessibility upgrades, also $7,000 for the gallery collection acquisitions. Also 30,000 for the art gallery collection storage system, which is an important part of maintaining our vast collection. We are proud to be taking action on continuing improving our relationship with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community members, and we look to continue to develop our internal organisational reconciliation action plan. We'll continue to identify opportunities to keep improving our community engagement and communications, including through surveys and the implementation of a community engagement online portal. This will ensure the community members, especially those in the rural areas, are able to be included and to have their say. We continue to have a commitment to providing a packed event schedule, including favourites such as our outdoor ball, and we'll assist this by implementing an event management system further into the year to help with group bookings. That's all, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Dave, Councillor Dave. Appreciate that. So, councillors, just in ending up, a paragraph in my opening remarks on the budget is, I've cut a few things out. This new budget will continue to fund delivery, the actions we committed to in our 4-year council plan. This will help make our community aspirations a reality and bring council's delivery commitments to life, and that's what we're here to do. The 2022-23 budget is to ensure delivery of these key projects on our great path ahead. Councillors, I'll put the recommendation to the vote in accepting this budget. All those in favour? Got a full house there, Councillor Bussell?
I'll call for a division, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bussell. All those in favour of the budget, please raise their hand. And we've got Councillor Rees, Councillor Bussell, I can see Councillor Grant, Councillor Fitzpatrick, Councillor Fuller, Councillor Benton's hand in accepting, and all those against?
Councillor Herry.
Thank you, I just didn't see that, thank you. The recommendation is carried, thank you. So we will move on to item, thank you Sarah, and Sarah back again for item 14.2, which is the policy change to the advisory committees.
Thank you, Mayor Rees, and these will be a bit more succinct. This next report is presented to Council to progress proposed changes to the current advisory committee model and to go out to seek public feedback on a proposed new draft community reference group policy. This work has been undertaken to have a look at our advisory committees at the request of councillors and the CEO, and just to have a look at how we can improve the efficiency and effectiveness and flexibility of those committees, so that when we are seeking independent advice, we can, the people participating in that can feel that they are participating meaningfully, and that council can also get the most value from that process. So this recommendation is in 3 parts. The first is to establish a new policy to enable formation of a new community reference group structure, and to undertake, that would be formulated through a major council policy, so to undertake the public consultation required for a major council policy and seek community feedback on that. Second and third part of the recommendation are subject to finalisation and adoption of that policy, and those would be to endorse terms of reference for initially the creation of a business and industry reference group, and also a sustainability and environmental reference group. And the final point is to then, again subject to establishing the policy, to endorse the termination of some existing advisory committees, being WEDTAC, the AAAC and the Place Naming Advisory Committee. So that's a summary of the recommendation for you there, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ridley. Are there any questions from the gallery? No, thank you. Can I have a mover of this recommendation, please?
Councillor Bussell.
Thank you, Councillor Bussell, and a seconder.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Bussell, would you like to speak on the recommendation?
Yeah, look, thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank all the people that have been on these groups and give their time to volunteer. And it's very fitting that today is Volunteer Day and the people on the past advisory committees are all volunteers. So I'd just like to thank all them. I think there's been a lot of thought go into constructing this, and I think it'll be great to review it in 12 months' time. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Grant, did you have anything to add?
Only to acknowledge what Councillor Bustle has said in thanking the people that have given their time to be part of the advisory committees. You know, we've worked through a process aimed at gaining greater efficiency and getting more from the people that are providing advice to council. You know, I think it can't be a static process, it's an ongoing process, and we as councillors are constantly being exposed to information and opinion and advice from the community, and I think the way that we're going will actually enhance that and make it a stronger and better process. But of course, welcome the input from the community, and again, to be looking at this in 12 months' time.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Any other councillor would like to talk on the recommendation? No? Thank you. I'll put the recommendation to a vote. All those in favour?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor
Sorry.
Herrick.
I did want to talk. Sorry, Councillor Herrick, please.
Councillor Benton.
First.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, as one of the chairman of the AAAC, I endorse what Councillor Bustle and Councillor Grant has already said. Although I suppose I'm one of the councillors that's still got some reservations of how this is actually going to pan out. Excuse me, I think it's going to be a lot of work on both sides, the council and the community, to make sure that they engage with their specific groups in making it work, because, or we'll just be back where we are with this. So I support the motion going forward. I will look very much to the 12 months. I know that this isn't the adoption of the whole thing, it's out for 29 days, and we'll see how it pans out in 12 months' time. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. Good thoughts. Councillor Herrick.
Thank you, Marys. Yeah, I have some reservations around this structure that's proposed. I appreciate that this is going out to the community for a 28-day period of exhibition, and we will hear from the community what their thoughts are. My reservations largely sit around a sense that I felt like we probably wanted or needed to go in the other direction with more framework and more structure and more formality, perhaps for our committees. I can't help but feel that in my short time while being here, that part of the issue I guess was there perhaps wasn't the greatest direction, and then there weren't really robust channels for those committees to kind of feed into council and for it to be elevated as part of a council decision-making process. So I feel like a little bit like a heavier touch is possibly the direction we should have taken it. This is going in a bit of a lighter touch direction for the committees. However, I do look forward to hearing what the community's thoughts are with respect to the draft policy as it goes out for exhibition. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Herrick. No other councillors? Councillor Bustle, did you want to finish off?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour?
All carried.
Yes, I can see my sense. Thank you. All carried. Thank you. The recommendation is carried. Thank you, Sarah. We'll go back on to item number 14.3, which is governance rules revision.
Yep, thank you. The governance rules are another major council policy, or they fall under the major council policy governance, the governance rules. So this report is proposing updates to the governance rules to incorporate the rules around how we hold online meetings and the ability of councillors to attend council meetings and other forums online. and also for members of the public to participate in public question time virtually. And this is because come the 2nd of September, interim regulations put in place around COVID to enable this to happen for councils will come to an end, and now all councils need to incorporate this into our own governance rules. The proposed changes do also incorporate a few insertions based on the previous item to enable that to be enacted once, or subject to the community feedback and any further changes. I would just note in the agenda we did provide a marked up copy, but it hasn't come through in the final published version of the agenda, so we'll make sure that's in the version of the minutes for anyone who wants to see the specific track changes. So the recommendation then is over to councillors to endorse the revised governance rules, attach the report for a purpose of public consultation, and to authorise the CEO to give public notice to that effect, and then after the 28 days to either return to consider further recommendations subject to feedback from the community, or if no submissions are received requesting change, to go ahead and adopt the updated governance rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ridley. Are there any questions from the gallery? No. Thank you. Can I have a mover, please?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I do an amended recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, so the amended is as per the recommendation with the following changes: that 1A 10.1.8 add after that meeting, the preferred method of councillor attendance is in person. 1B 10.1.9 replace with a councillor must inform the chair in writing with 72 hours prior to the commencement of the meeting that they will be attending online, and the mayor must similarly inform the CEO and the deputy mayor. And 1C, removal of the references to statements in 13.1.1 and 13.2.2 and in the definitions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. That's the new recommendation with those changes. You're happy to move that, obviously, Councillor Fitzpatrick, as reading those?
Yes.
Greg, can I have a seconder, please?
Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Any councillor, Councillor Fitzpatrick, would you like to talk on the recommendation?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other councillor like to talk on the recommendation? Take that as a no.
Councillor Herry.
Sorry, Councillor Herry.
Beg your pardon. Thank you, Mayor Rees. I'll just say that the governance rules are an interesting read for anyone that wants to learn how the meetings work. They also control how the public can interact in the meetings, so everything to do with questions and submitting petitions and how to address the meeting. It's an interesting read, I think. I just want to kind of highlight that one of the changes, others might have something to say around that, but I'm just unsure around the removal of references to statements, which was 1C. I mean, statements are still kind of technically going to be allowed, and the rules kind of read that statements are okay, so I'm just unsure about the removal of references to statements and what that will achieve. But it will be interested to hear what the community's thoughts are on that and how that reads to them, as it kind of really pertains to how they interact with the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Perhaps can I just qualify Councillor Herry's comment with regard to the statements? I think, you know, the forum has always been around the opportunity for the community to ask questions, and statements, you know, I think it's probably just a matter of semantics around the wording. People, when they do ask a question, there's usually a statement that precludes the question, but I think the aim has always been to give people an opportunity to have a discussion with council, to ask questions, and it not simply be a forum for them to, you know, get rid of some frustration. And I think, you know, it's something that actually is a positive thing. When you look at the rules and regs around the way we conduct our meetings, I think it gives us a framework for orderly discourse and assist in that process. And I'll be interested also to hear what the community has to say. But I think it is about ensuring that we do the best possible job in terms of our governance.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor, if there's no other councillors, Councillor Fitzpatrick is the mover. You have nothing to finish off?
I'd just like to endorse Councillor, Mr Mayor and Councillor Grant, and I think the ordinance, and it gives confidence to the Mayor or the Chair of the functionality of the meeting to be able to pick people that are absolutely just grandstanding, to be able to direct to the governance rules, but to ask a question and not just come in and make a statement in relationship to whatever issue that they want to, because at the end of the day we don't have to respond to a statement. I think it just gives the chairman the confidence going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Benjamin, for that clarity. There's no other questions, councillors. I'll go back again to Councillor Fitzpatrick. Did you need to say anything to finish off, Councillor Fitzpatrick?
No thanks, Mr Mayor.
Oh, thank you. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour accepting the recommendation?
All carried.
Thank you, Councillor Bussell. Again, I'll go back to 14.4, which is the draft fraud and corruption control policy. Again, Director Ridley.
Thank you. So this is another major council policy which would also go out for public consultation, which is Council's fraud and corruption control policy. It's been reviewed as part of our policy review cycle, so this is more of a standard process, just seeking endorsement from councillors to publish the draft policy to the community for comment and either return with any recommended changes or immediately adopt the policy should we not receive any submissions requesting change. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the gallery? No. Thank you. I'll look for a person to move the recommendation.
Councillor Fuller.
Councillor Dave Fuller, the mover, and a seconder.
Yep.
Sorry, Harry.
Councillor Benton.
Councillor Harvey Benton is the seconder. Councillor Fuller, did you want to talk on the recommendation?
No, thank you.
Okay, I'll look across to Councillor Harvey Benton. Did you need to say anything, Councillor?
It's just housekeeping, I believe. This is really all it is, and it's out now for the public to make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. If there's no other councillors, I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour?
All carried.
Thank you, Councillor Bussell. The recommendation is carried. 14.5 is the Audit and Risk Vetting's independent member appointment. Again, Director Ridley, please, your last item.
Thank you. So this last item is to appoint a new independent member to our Audit and Risk Committee. The charter for that committee says it must comprise 2 councillors and at least 3 and up to 4 independent members. We like to work with 4 members to ensure we always have quorum. I just want to take the opportunity to say a very big thank you also to Gail Lee, who was on the committee for many years and most recently as chair, for all her dedication, commitment, collaboration and time that she has given to council. So thank you very much to Gail. So the recommendation, there is confidential applications attached which followed an expression of interest process. And the recommendation seeks council's endorsement to appoint the recommended candidate for a 3-year term and notify applicants of council's decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Any questions from the gallery? No. Can I have somebody move, please? Councillor Bussell.
Councillor Bussell will move it.
Councillor Bussell will move, and a seconder.
Councillor Herry.
Thank you, Councillor Herry. Councillor Bussell, did you want to talk?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. Gail Lee was an amazing lady with numbers, and I want to thank her too for the service. It's not the most exciting committee to be on, but it's very, very necessary. And all the audit, people on the audit committee very, very much committed to scrutinising the council, which is what's so important. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I too, as the Mayor, would like to say a big thank you to Gail Lee. I've worked alongside her now as a member of the Audit Committee, and you have to remember, audit just isn't about finances. There's a lot else goes on in Audit Committee rather than just numbers. And she's done a wonderful job. She'll be sadly missed, and they're very, very big shoes to fill. So my appreciation to her and her service. Thank you, Councillor Herry. Did you have anything or any other councillor on that?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rees. Yeah, I just want to add that I sat in on an Audit and Risk Committee meeting the other day just as an observer to learn a little bit and gained a much deeper appreciation of what that committee does. They do a mountain of work. I guess just leave it at that, and very appreciative for the work that they do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Herry. If there's no other questions, Councillor Bussell, did you need to finish or are you okay?
No, I'm okay, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Okay, I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour?
All carried, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. All carried the recommendation. Harry, would you like to announce who our person is to go on the
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So, although we've lost Gail Lee, we've now gained the services of Matthew Fagans, and I'm sure he will do a very, very good job as well. Thank you, Mr Mayor, and congratulations to Matthew.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item number 15.1, which is infrastructure services. We'll be introducing Director Goonan. And Director, this is the C31135 WSAC, which is WISAC expansion project and the tender award. Thank you, Director Goonan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This report is presented to Council to recommend the award of the contract to complete the Wangaratta Sports and Aquatic Centre expansion. So Council was successful in receiving funding through the State Government Community Sports and Infrastructure Stimulus Fund to the tune of $5.46 million. The expansion of the WISAC building will include a redevelopment and expansion of the indoor stadium with multi-purpose courts, netball, basketball, volleyball, and 2 new courts, upgrading the existing show court to competition level, including additional seating and a major expansion to the gym. These works are key projects from the Parklands Master Plan and will position Wangaratta Sports and Aquatic Centre as a state and national level facility. The recommendation is to award the contract to Southern Cross Developers, allocate an additional $3.904256 million to the project from adjustments in Council's long-term financial plan, and authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal the relevant contracts and disclose the contract price.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions from the gallery? At this stage I can't see the gallery, so Harry?
Yes, there's a question from Mr Udigan.
Yes, please step forward.
Yeah.
Would you want to step forward there and just state your name, Mr Udigan? Just got to make it a bit formal, mate.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Bruce Udigan. I'm on a number of community organisations, and I have a little bit of concern. I understand the project's a good project and you allocated $3 million to start with, but you allocate nearly $8 million or another $7 million total. When there's a truckload of small communities want projects as well, I'm just wondering how that's going to affect all that. Push projects back because we've borrowed so much money on one facility, and like I know Rowley's looking at the netball courts, they thought they were going to get them this year, they've been pushed back, other organisations, and like up at Whitfield, we can't even get the grass mowed in the fire danger period properly. They say, oh, there's not enough money, or that's all we have to do. It's a place of last resort. We can't even get that done properly with a couple $1,000. We can find $24 million extra for a project. So I just have a concern of how we're going to guarantee smaller communities proper funding, and when we can't even get a couple $1,000 for a place of emergency to get more funding there, let alone all the other major projects other smaller communities want.
Thanks, Bruce, for your question. Mark, did you want to talk on that, or any councillor want to talk on that?
I'm happy to. Yep.
Thanks, Marcus.
So thanks for the question, Bruce. To address the first part of it, so the movement in the long-term financial plan that council has made has not adjusted any projects that sit outside the Wangaratta CBD area. There has been adjustments to 2 projects within that have involved pushing them out 2 years further. So it has no effect on our long-term financial plan from the rural areas point of view. Just to address your question around the inadequacies of slashing in places of last resort, we've had a number of conversations with the Whitfield Rec Reserve with regards to what that work involves, and it is the same at any other place of last resort, and council undertakes that to the standards as required.
Thank you, Director. If there's no other questions from the gallery, I'll look for someone to move the recommendation. Councillor Russell. Councillor Fuller is the mover, and a seconder, please.
Councillor Benton.
Councillor Harvey-Benton. Thank you. Councillor Fuller, did you want to talk on the recommendation?
Just merely to acknowledge that these cost increases come down to supply and demand and a global issue as opposed to a project management or anything to that effect. And whilst we wish we didn't have to do it, we are in a position that we have to increase this one in this instance.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Councillor Benton, did you want to talk about anything?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, and I suppose it's just to expand a little bit on what Bruce Yerbingham has said, and we've had major discussions around the briefing table, specifically down that line of and representing a rural area going forward. And problem is with the rock and a hard place I felt in relationship to how we move forward with this in respect to the rural communities. We have grant funding. If we don't use that funding, we're going to have to give it back, and it has ramifications down the track. We've also got to be able to make sure that that facility is upgraded to a standard that we can attract and will attract, and we've got 2 major towns close to us that seem to be able to get these attractions of major events. And I'm not saying that will be disregarding the rural area, but as Marcus Gurnan, the Director, has pointed out, this money has been found within this urban area, and that is one of the reasons that I've supported it, that it's mainly the ones in the urban area are funding this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. I'd also like to state that the WISAC expansion does facilitate for all people within the rural city of Wangaratta and outside. It does have thousands of people, or hundreds of thousands of people that pass through that facility and use these facilities every day, every year. So it's a great expansion. I'm fully in support of it. I'm sorry that the costs have blown out, which they have, but we have found that funding elsewhere and won't affect further projects down in our long-term financial plan, which is great to hear. Any other comments from councillors?
Councillor Herry.
Councillor Jack Herry, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I definitely do want to acknowledge Bruce's comments in the question he put to us. I also want to acknowledge Marcus's response and maybe just put a few words of my own understanding around that. So the long-term financial plan obviously spans 10 years and there's a range of, I guess, flexibility, agility in that's variable depending how far out you look. It's a lot more firm just the next year or 2 or 3 out, whereas it's a lot less, I guess, less fine-tuned in the second half of it. So while we have managed to find money, and as Marcus highlighted, it came primarily redirected from city-centric projects, it's definitely taking out some of that agility as we go forward in the coming years. And I do think it is a really valid point to have a think about with respect to setting up these really big projects and big master plans and following down that pathway such that we get to a certain point that it is a really difficult decision to contemplate withdrawing from what is a really substantial project and will no doubt have broad benefits for a range of the community, a wide range of users, a large number of users, but definitely is at competition with various other demands. So I was really concerned with the $4 million increase, and we did review and have a look at the scope of the project and what options there could be there. But unfortunately, there wasn't really much in the way of a viable kind of modification, and especially given the stage of the project, I'm really not wholly convinced that abandoning it at this late stage would be in the best interests of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harry. No other councillors there? And I can see Harry. Would you like to finish off, Harry, or if you're done?
No, I'm okay, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mover. So we'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour?
No, Mr. Mayor, I didn't move it.
Sorry? Sorry?
Councillor Fuller moved it.
Sorry, Councillor Fuller, you did too. Have you finished, Councillor Fuller?
I have finished, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fuller. I'll now put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendation?
All carried.
Thank you. The recommendation is carried. Thank you all. 15.2, thank you, Director Goonan, Tree Management Plan for 2022.
Yes, this report is presented to Council to seek endorsement to place the reviewed tree management plan 2022 to 2026 on public exhibition for a period of 28 days. The tree management plan provides Council strategic and operational direction in the management of trees and has been initially reviewed with minor changes made by officers to reflect current management principles and processes. The tree management plan aims to provide an initial guidance and consistency when making tree management decisions. The recommendation is that Council endorses the reviewed tree management plan, places on exhibition for 28 days, reviews and considers all submissions. If no submissions are requested, requests and changes are received, adopts without further resolution.
Thank you, Director Goonan. Are there any questions from the gallery? Can I look for a mover, please? Councillor Bussell?
Councillor Bussell will move it, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to move...
Councillor. Correct, keep going.
Move it with the exclusion of point 3. Exclusion of point 3.
Okay, so you're happy to move that with that exclusion of item point 3?
So
can I have a second? Can I have a seconder of that, please?
I'll second that.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Bussell, did you want to talk?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like this. I think there's a lot more discussion to be had about the trees, and I invite people to submit all their thoughts, and this is to do with the urban trees. And I'd like it to come back to a council meeting so we can have a further discussion, because if you're trying to cool your city down, there's no better way than to have the appropriate trees, not all trees, appropriate trees. And thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bussell. Councillor Grant, did you need to talk on this?
No, only just to endorse Councillor Bussell's comments, to say that this is in fact a very, very important document, and one that we certainly invite the community to provide input into, because trees are the thing that will really make the difference in terms of the way we approach climate change mitigation.
Are there any other councillors that would like to talk on
Councillor Herrick.
this recommendation? Councillor Herrick.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. I guess I just want to give a bit of context to this document. It's if my understanding is correct, it's largely a asset management document and pertains a great deal to, I guess, the how, when, what and why of how we manage the asset class that makes up, that are our trees. And as Councillor Bussell pointed out, it pertains to the urban trees related to the areas within the 60-kilometre zone and a few other categories. I guess I want to make that point because it's distinct from some other documents. It's distinct from, I guess, a greater, bigger, broader strategy that pertains to trees and maybe like a full holistic urban greening strategy, which I would suggest we don't have such a thing at the moment. There is an open space strategy in development, I believe, which will also relate to trees to a degree, so it's another one for people interested in trees to keep an eye out for. And of course there is also a tree canopy policy, which is in development at the moment. So there are many different documents working in this space. I just want to make the point that this isn't the be-all and end-all of it, and it's, I would suggest it's not a really big picture, kind of high-level strategic document like, say, perhaps, you know, the reference Bendigo's urban greening strategy or that sort of really high-level document. I would also suggest that there will be a number of people, having said all that, that would be pretty keen to have a say on how we manage our trees and that asset class, how it's handled. And I think the 28-day period is a little on the short side in terms of letting everyone get involved in that process. So I'll move an amendment to the motion just to modify that 28-day period to read 45 days. If I've done that correctly. So
that's a new part of the recommendation. I'll go back to Councillor Bussell. You, as the mover, Councillor Bussell, are you happy to have that in there as part of a recommendation to go to 45 days rather than the standard?
I was quite happy with the 28 days, Mr. Mayor, but I will agree.
Do you want to do that, or want to go with what you've got? I'll just confer with Councillor Grant.
I will agree with Councillor Herrick.
Okay, Councillor Grant is a seconder for that. Are you still happy to second that recommendation with that change?
In essence, but I mean, it's something that we can also look at the end of 28 days. If we've received a plethora of submissions, then we can go and work with the submissions that we've received to take it out. You know, a further extension of time. I'm not entirely sure why we're doing that, but I mean, if you're comfortable with it, you're the mover, Councillor Bussell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So any other councillor would like to talk on the recommendation?
So, sorry, Mr. Mayor, can I just check procedurally, because we've technically got Jack moving a third version of the thing, because it's your proposal, or is Harry happy to move it on your behalf?
So I was moving an amendment to the motion we were considering,
recommendation.
Councillor Bussell put up, and because the mover and the seconder gave assent to that amendment, it doesn't go to a vote. I believe it just becomes substantive.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Fuller, but we'll put the whole recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Yes, correct. Councillor Bussell? All carried. Thank you. The recommendation is carried. I'll now move on to, just before I do move on, I just want to go back to Director Goonan at 15.1. Do we need to announce the contract price, etc. there, Director Goonan?
Yeah, we definitely should. So the disclosed contract price for the Wangaratta Sports and Aquatic Centre expansion is $11,631,039.18 ex GST.
And obviously still the same firm that you mentioned earlier on.
Correct.
Correct. So I just wanted to make sure that was noted. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, we'll now move on to item 15.3, which is Waste Services Policy 2022.
This report is presented to Council to adopt the Waste Services Policy following a community consultation period of 28 days. The Waste Services Policy was presented to Council at the April ordinary meeting and placed on public exhibition. The policy sets out Council's waste services, including expectations of these services and associated costs. The Waste Services Policy assists with delivering the outcomes specified in Council's waste management strategy. Waste collection and associated charges are all set through fees and charges process. At the close of the community consultation period, one submission was received. The submission was in relation to $5 waste vouchers. The submission will be considered through the review of the waste strategy, which will be undertaken in 2023, and no changes have been made to the from the draft policy. The recommendation is that Council adopt the waste strategy policy 2022.
Thank you, Director Goonan. Are there any questions from the gallery? Yes, thank you. Come forward, please, and state your name.
Anne Dunstan, Tarrawingi. Is this going to be able to be revisited once the Jebedian situation is addressed? Because there's issues in relation to owners' corporation managements in that. So if it's adopted tonight, because the closing dates finished before the bookings were announced.
Yeah, absolutely, and really good question. So Council's obviously going through a community consultation process on what the glass collection service will look like, which is what you're referring to with the purple bins. At this stage, I wouldn't see us introducing that service or Council agreeing to what that service looks like before we're looking at the next waste policy.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Anne. Great question. If there's no other questions from the gallery, I'll look for a mover for that recommendation. Please, Councillor Bustle. Councillor Herry, I just saw raise his hand. Thank you, Councillor Herry is the movie. And a seconder?
Councillor Grant.
Councillor Benton. Sorry, I got Councillor Benton on my side. Sorry, Councillor Grant on that one. Councillor Herry, did you want to talk on the recommendation?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Benton, anything to say?
Thanks.
Thank you. Would any councillor like to talk on the recommendation? No, I'll take that as a no. So, ladies and gentlemen, fellow councillors, put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour?
Carried.
Councillor Bustle, thank you. The recommendation is carried. 15.4 is the recycling contract. Director Goonan, your last item.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. This report is presented to Council to extend the existing garbage recycling and organics collection contract. This will provide a bridging contract between our existing contract and the possible new contract using the Resource Recovery Collective for the Hume region. Council originally entered into this contract on the 13th of April 2015. The initial contract term was 5 years and is now due to expire on the 30th of June 2022, and that's inclusive of 2 one-year ministerial exemptions due to the China sword situation. The recommendation that's put in front of Council is to extend the contract services to JJ Richards for a further term of 1 by 2 year and 3 by 1 year, and authorise the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal the relevant contract documents.
Thank you, Director Goonan. Are there any questions from the gallery? I'll take that as a no. Can I please have a mover for that? Councillor Bustle, please watch.
I'll move that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bustle is the mover, and I'll second that. Councillor Bustle, if you like. Did you want to talk on the recommendation,
No,
Councillor Bustle?
No, thank you.
There's no need for me. Would any other councillor like to talk on the recommendation?
No.
No? I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour?
Carried.
Thank you, the recommendation is carried. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll now move to development services. Just got to find the right page here. Sorry, I've got it here now. Is item 16.1, which is a planning permit application, PIN application 21163, 67 to 77 Mason Street, Wangaratta, stage 56 lot subdivision, removal of native vegetation and creation of an easement. I'll hand over to Director Swart to introduce this item. Thank you, Director Swart.
Thank you. The application proposes 56 new residential lots with varying lot sizes from 2,000 square meters all the way up to just over 4,500 square meters. To achieve that, the proposal also proposes removal of native vegetation and the creation of an easement. As part of the application process, notice of the proposal was given and the application was also referred to authorities or relevant authorities. Council received 9 objections during that process, and a summary of the issues raised by objectors is included in the officer's report, including officers' responses to those. Referral authorities did not object to the application, and the application and other relevant information, including the objections, have been considered and assessed against the provisions of the Wangaratta Planning Scheme and the Planning Environment Act, and the officer's recommendation is to refuse the application in its current form. The 2 main reasons for this recommendation relates to the specific design of the proposal or the subdivision layout, including the absence of public open space for an emerging community, and the design of the subdivision failing to appropriately respond to remnant native vegetation on the site.
Thank you, Director Swart. I'll go to see if there's any questions from the gallery, which then I intend to introduce an alternate motion. So are there any questions from the gallery on this item? Take that note. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to move an alternate motion for PIN application 21/163 Mason Street, Wangaratta. And the alternate motion will read as this: that Council issues a notice of decision to grant a permit with respect to the planning permit application PIN app 21163 for a stage 56 lot subdivision, removal of native vegetation and creation of an easement, subject to the conditions listed in Appendix 1 and in accordance with the submitted plans. It also, so I want to point that one out, that it's in accordance with the submitted plans by the applicant. 2, notifies the applicant and submitters of this decision, and all standard conditions of the subdivision apply from there. So that's my alternate motion as the mover. Can I have a seconder, please, to put the motion on the table? Councillor Benton, I think that hand is, as the seconder. Thank you, Councillor Benton. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to talk on the recommendation here that this is an alternate motion to approve the subdivision as the plan supplied by the applicant. This is good for Wangaratta. This revolves a lot around the charging or the giving of open space. So we have the right to charge a 5% financial monetary amount of open space to the developer, or take 5% of the land in the subdivision for us as a council to then maintain in perpetuity, forever. We have huge amounts of unused land as open space that we can't afford to maintain correctly. And there was a subdivision next door recently in Mason Street, and no land was given as open space. We just sought for the money. There was a letter supplied by DWELP as part of the planning application process, and DWELP themselves, let me just point out what DWELP is, Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, has supplied a written response in relation to the subdivision and its current forms, and has stated that they were happy for the subdivision to proceed in its current form, and noted that they were happy with the minimal amount of trees that have been knocked out. I met recently in Melbourne with the Shadow Minister for Planning, the Honourable Ryan Smith, and I stated how our planning system is so old-fashioned, clunky, and our town planners are making decisions on old planning legislation and policy from 20 plus years ago, which is not in line with modern day requirements. And then it's unfair for our officers, who I think deep down would think that this is a great project, but have to run with what they feel is in front of them in policy. We talk about open space. Directly over the road from this subdivision is the Wangaratta Common, probably one of our biggest acreages of open space that is there for all people to go and use. Walk the pathways, walk through. It's the old airport. There's native wildlife, there's kangaroos. They want to create an open space area down the back of this subdivision to allow people to look at or to walk on. And then, you know what's going to happen? They're going to get called by council, they're going to call council to come and maintain it, mow the grass, it's a fire hazard. These properties are all half-acre subdivisions. The land in question that we're talking about, which is the major component of this, with the open space that they wanted for these lands, is over an acre. They've got beautiful trees on it. They will be protected under the 4,000 square metre rule because it's over 4,000 square metres. They can't knock the trees down. And there are plenty of nature-loving people that would love to build on these allotments with beautiful trees surrounding them. I think one of the allotments is around about 1,200 square metres that are built in the envelope. Most houses are around about 300 square metres in size. The other allotment is around about the 900 square metres. Again, 300 standard size allotment for a house, or sorry, not the allotment size, but the building envelope. Most house sizes are only 300 square metres. This gives great diversity, gives buyers the opportunity to buy land a little bit bigger, be able to do a few more things with it, and it's a great decision for council to approve this alternate motion and move ahead with a great subdivision that these developers will do. Thank you. I'll now go to Councillor Benton as the seconder. Did you have anything to say, Councillor Benton?
Only that, Mr Mayor, I've walked around the area out there, and I feel that I endorse a lot what you say in relationship to the open space, and I find the argument to have more open space at the moment is just, even though it won't be used for 50 years down the track, there is a lot of open space very close to this. Not the ones that you mentioned, but there's still open space out there. The other situation is that these blocks out there are 2,000 metres the minimum. The two that is questioned about the open space, they're over 4,000 square metres. Any reduction on trees on those two blocks, they must come back to council to get approval for those to be removed. And I'm a little bit worried, as you pointed out, further down the track, the maintenance of that area out there is going to become a burden on the ratepayers to be able to maintain the open space in relationship to that particular area. And I would rather just see, I think, the developers utilise that land for what the purpose they put before us. And in relation to, I do support that DWELP have given their sanction to this development going forward, and if ever an organisation is worth its salt and there was an objection in relationship to the amount of trees being removed or not being removed, they would be the ones that I would say that should put a red flag up, and they haven't. So I am supporting the motion as it is put the planning application before council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. I've just lost the whole screen there, Councillor Bustle, for that, but can you direct me to any other councillors who'd like to talk on the recommendation?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Councillor Herry would like to speak.
Thanks, Councillor Herry.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. I'm generally inclined to talk against the proposal on the table at the moment. There are a few things that have been said. You said the planning system is clunky and out of date. I would agree, but I would suggest that it has to go in the other way, and we have to look at how we can integrate in a very assured and secure way more natural landscape features. The planning scheme does not in its current form provide that assurance and security, and that is a large reason why I believe the planners have opted to put a recommendation in the agenda that is refusal of the permit. You have that concept of the 4,000 metre block size, and that really just means that a block over 4,000 metres it can't access the vegetation removal exemption that would apply to a block that's smaller. And yes, Councillor Benton suggested that it will come to council. However, in approving the usage for residential use around these really significant, substantial old trees, we're creating a bit of land use conflict, and in improving people to build around these trees, we're introducing conflicts. They may not exist in the future. It may be way down the path. Depending on who moves in, which is completely out of our control, it may never arise as a conflict. However, that's very much the point, is that it then becomes out of our control to retain these trees in perpetuity. And they're really old, significant, large trees. That's not to talk about the trees in the blocks that are under 4,000 square metres, where removal will be, at the discretion of whoever decides to purchase and develop that block. So I'm inclined to go against the motion that you put on the table.
Thank you, Councillor Herry. Councillor Russell, was it?
Councillor Grant would like to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Russell and Mr Mayor. Look, I have no doubt that this is a worthy development, however, and positive for Wangaratta. However, I'm concerned that the application does not respond appropriately or adequately to the retention of native vegetation. And we've had this issue before, where we've trusted the scheme to protect us from the loss of trees, and it doesn't. And I think the specific design of this application does not avoid, nor does it minimise, the loss of native vegetation. So I believe the application is actually underdone, and I'm worried that unless we have controls in place, that we run the risk of losing trees, vegetation unnecessarily. So I would like to see that we actually accept the recommendation that the plan has put forward.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Russell, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I'll say a few words. I can't say it any more elegantly than what Councillor Grant has just said. So there's not a chance that I can support this motion. Thank you.
Any other councillors like to talk on it? No?
No.
Okay, sorry?
No.
No, thanks, Councillor Russell. So as the mover, I'd just like to finish off. I'd just like to point out, prior to my recommendation, I was asked for advice on this situation to have a 173 agreement in there as well, to doubly protect the trees. That states on title of the land. So anyone buying the land in the future, buying a house in the future that's already on that land, the 173 would say that you are fully aware that this parcel of land is over 4,000 square metres, that or not even to say that, just to state that you are not allowed to remove any of these trees. And I was advised against it, having in there, if I'm referring to what Irene Grant, Councillor Grant is saying, that the planning scheme lets us down. And it does sometimes. People don't go when they buy a parcel of land and look up and say, oh, it's 4,010 square metres, I can't knock down any of the trees, so I'm not going to. They don't go in, they just fall in love with it. But a 173 would. It would state on there And every title, when someone reads the title, it states 173, and every solicitor would say, make sure you go and have a look. The solicitor doesn't care if there's 5 trees, 10 trees, or no trees on there. So that's where a 173 agreement would doubly protect those trees on that allotment, and I was advised against having that in there. So I'm a bit peeved at that, and especially listening now to what Councillor Grant is saying, and maybe that might have swayed her in that decision. Again, I'll put it for Councillor Bussell, I'll put to you. You're the one who says we need more subdivisions, more opportunity, more growth to obtain more rates. And saying no makes you hypocritical. You're the one who says we need more rates to pay for our debt. And you're knocking back 2 allotments that I estimate, once houses are built, would receive a $4,000 income per year in rates per allotment. There's $8,000 you've just thrown away. Harry, I'll put to you that you can't be half pregnant, mate. You're either for it or you're against it. What are your sayings?
Point of order, Chair. I move that the motion be put to the vote.
Yes, I agree.
What's the point of order? You've got to nominate what your point of order is.
Just a minute.
No, I'm not. I'm just telling the truth. Harry has mentioned that in the past, that you can't be half pregnant. I'm just saying what he said in the past.
That
So anyway,
yeah.
okay. Let's put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? How many have I got there, Councillor Bussell?
Councillor Benton, Councillor
Yes.
Herry, sorry, Councillor Benton,
Sorry.
and
Yes.
Councillor Rees.
So we've only got 2. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that recommendation is not carried. So I'll put an alternate recommendation again. My alternate recommendation is that the council issues a notice of decision to grant a permit with respect to planning permit application PINAP 21/163 for the staged multi-lot subdivision, removal of native vegetation and creative and easement, subject to the conditions listed in the Appendix 1, including a condition requiring amended plans to be submitted and approved showing lots 41 and 42, which is what we were talking about in the previous recommendation, be used as open space. So that is my second recommendation. If it doesn't get up or down, it'll go back to the original recommendation. Can I have a seconder for that, please, to put it on the table?
Councillor Fitzpatrick is the seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. So the reason for the second one, and they're the 2 allotments that you're mostly concerned about as councillors. I state the point that if the application refers back to the original application, the applicant has to go back and start from scratch. He has to pay more planning application fees. He takes that whole process over again, which could take 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, starting again. So that's why I put that, if you're happy to move ahead with having those 2 allotments, 41 and 42 from memory there, as open space contributions, would that alleviate your concerns over those 2 allotments and the trees, and hopefully accept this recommendation. Sorry, was that Councillor Fuller that was the seconder, Councillor Bussell?
Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Did you want to talk on this, Councillor Fitzpatrick, or are you happy for other councillors to talk?
No, I'm all good, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, does any other councillor like to talk on the recommendation?
Councillor Herry.
Councillor Herry.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. I just want to clarify that I was wrong to call a point of order before, and it was a procedural motion that I was going for, but still had to be dealt with at the moment. So that concept of...
Point of order, you're out of procedure there on your procedural motion. That was on the previous motion, this is on the new motion, so I think you're out of order. So continue on with your talk on this recommendation, please, Councillor Herry.
All right, sure. So that concept of starting from scratch, that the applicant has been engaged in a long process. to get to this point. It doesn't just happen overnight. So what I would say is that they perhaps, rather than aiming for an outcome that was unlikely to have, on the balance of all things, unlikely to have support of the planning scheme through the eyes of the planners, rather than aiming for a low outcome, they should have aimed for a higher outcome, you know, in those discussions in that pre-planning stage, which is an involved process, as I'm sure you would know, Mayor. I also just want to highlight, it's not just 41 and 42 lots, if they are the exact lots in question. There's also lots to the western, I believe it's western most boundary of the area, and there's a rearrangement there that is also required, and that's just not an easy thing that you can just write up in some conditions. So I'm inclined to go against the motion.
Thank you. If anybody else like to talk for or against the motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you and I have had discussions over this, and I think, quite frankly, I cannot support this motion. And the reason I'm not supporting it is because I don't think the direction from the council should be to just make the planning decisions at the table. I think the applicant has the right to bring it forward as an application, and the community has the right to then to be able to have it advertised so they can have an input of the neighbourhood around it. I think we get into very, very murky waters when council starts altering subdivision plans at the table. And the only reason I'm not supporting is that we must be a little bit more constituent and go moving forward in relationship to what we can do at the table. And just another point that I will point out, your 173 agreement is on lots 11 to 16, I think it is, if my memory is right, as on both motions. The 173 was put on, okay, they weren't put on your lots 41 and 42 on the previous motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benton. Any other councillor like to talk? Councillor Bustle, can I see anyone else?
Nobody else.
Thank you. So I'll just finish off there. That application for all of the allotments, either way, was advertised and marketed, and people did object. That's why we're here as well. And so they've had that opportunity. This is just taking 2 more allotments out, which is in favour of any of the objectors or people that viewed it. It's only a better thing. But obviously I haven't got the support, which annoys me and disgusts me, to be honest. So I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? The motion is not carried. We'll go back to the original recommendation. Stephen Swart, could you read the original recommendation again, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The officer's recommendation is to refuse this application in its current form.
Thank you. Can I have a mover, please?
Councillor Bustle will move that.
And a seconder, please, Councillor Bustle.
Councillor Herry.
Thank you, Councillor Herry. Councillor Bustle, did you want to talk on?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I've said previously, I'll assess every single planning application on its merits one by one. I won't be just being consistent and approving them all, so I just want to make that clear. I'll look at every single one on its merits. This is a good subdivision for Wangaratta, but not in its current form. So I want to say that. I think the council officers have appropriately done their homework, and I think that when it comes back, it will be not a good subdivision, a very good subdivision. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bustle. Any other councillors like to talk on the recommendation? No?
Councillor Grant.
Thank you. Councillor Grant, please.
Thank you. I also want to reiterate Councillor Bustle's comments with regard to this particular application. I said before, I felt that it was underdone. I don't believe that we should give it the thumbs up. Planning is a really, really difficult area for council always to make decisions on and do it in the most appropriate way. I believe we have. We've looked at the potential to save native vegetation into the future, and in doing what we're doing tonight is to accept what our planners have said. I believe that we're going to get the best development from this, because I think it will make a difference to Wangaratta, and I'm quite confident that we're ensuring that will take place. And I think, you know, the robust conversation around the table, I think, has just indicated that, you know, we are concerned, and also very much aiming to achieve the best result.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Any other councillors? No?
No, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bustle. I'd just like to talk on the recommendation. We talk about getting the best result. We talk about the options of keeping native vegetation. I wasn't in favour of knocking out the trees. My recommendations weren't in favour of knocking. They were still keeping them. Everybody's talking as if it was that we were going to bowl all the trees out. That wasn't the recommendation. I'm for keeping as much native vegetation as possible. We had a letter from Dwell that said it was good. So you're going also against what Dwell says. So at that, Councillor Bustle, you were the mover. Anything to say in conclusion?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just urge all my fellow councillors to support the recommendation from the officers. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure you will.
I think I'll put the recommendation to a vote. All those in favour? How many have you got there, Councillor?
Councillor Herry and 4 others.
So we'll...
I'll call division there. I'll call division, Mr. Mayor.
Certainly. All those in favour of the recommendation, please, Councillor Bustle, could you read the names?
Councillor Herry, Councillor Bustle, Councillor Grant, Councillor Fitzpatrick, Councillor Fuller.
And all those against the recommendation?
Councillor Benton, Councillor Rees.
Thank you, Councillor. The recommendation, as stated there, has been carried. Thank you. Just one moment. Get back onto the meeting there. It's public question time, and I just like, before I ask the public questions from the floor, I just have a couple of public question notes that I would like to read. Tonight or this afternoon, this morning, we received a letter and questions in relation to an issue, but Council has received 6 questions from a submitter for tonight's meeting. These questions have been disallowed by our CEO under the provisions of the Council's governance rules, and the submitter has been advised of this. There was also another question from a submitter fairly well in relation to the same issues, and 14 questions have been received by a submitter. As this exceeds the limit of 2 questions for public question time, as outlined in 13.3/4, and the questions will be taken on notice, and the questions will be responded to in writing in accordance with our governance rules. So thank you. There is no other written questions. I'd like now to hand over to Councillor Bustle to look to the gallery. Are there any public questions from the gallery?
Mr. Griffiths.
Thank you, Mr. Griffiths. Step forward, state your name and your question.
John Griffiths from Morale. It's really a question of procedure. I was following it fairly closely, the last recommendations about Mason Street, and I couldn't hear any reference to a question from the gallery. And in the past, I thought that was set procedure. I was expecting to be able to ask a question, so...
I did actually do that at the start. I did actually state that at the start when Stephen Sward, Director Sward, read out the first time. I did say before I go to the gallery, I have an alternate recommendation, but I'll go to the gallery. Are there any public questions? And I didn't think there was. That's my recollection of it, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, I'll take it that you're probably following things more closely than I was.
No, but happy to answer your question
Yeah,
now, please, Mr. Griffiths, in relation to that.
I'll put a question regarding the Mason Street issue, and that is to actually go back and, because I think it's worthwhile not making mistakes that you might have in the past, because I believe after talking to the planning department, following on discussions and decisions about Christensen's Lane, where I believe a large number of big trees, or quite a number of big trees, big red gums, were knocked out, and I went down there to have a look and saw them, and I believe that the decisions there were, and I'm just asking this question, do you think the decisions were made perhaps too quickly? And I'm pleased to see that there's more time taken about Mason Street, because in talk to the planning department, that the trees were taken out because there was problems about where the entry for people into those particular blocks. So I just asked, was that a problem with that particular subdivision? Because that's what the planning department explained to me happened. They got caught out.
Stephen Ford?
Yes, look, my understanding of that subdivision process and the reason why those trees had to be removed does relate to road infrastructure. So it's a bit of history around that subdivision where a subdivision was approved and then subsequently that change needed to happen to ensure that there's sufficient access to that subdivision, yes.
We just follow on to that, then obviously there needs to be a lot of careful approach so that doesn't happen again. That would be right.
We consider every subdivision application on its merits, as you saw tonight, and we consider, what conditions we have to apply to those. If the question is, do we look to previous processes to try and learn from those? Absolutely.
Thank you. Can I go back to original Lakeside 2, but I'll perhaps limit it since I've already asked one question. I had two issues that I wanted to raise. I'm trying to work out which one I should follow. I think I'll follow with the one regarding the CBD, and I don't know whether there's been discussion about this in the past. I suspect there might have been, but no decisions were made. And it's to do with the lanes that exist in a number of places in the CBD. There's lanes next to the Commonwealth Bank. There's lanes next to Adam Curtis Pharmacy, next to Solmo's. In other words, what I'm saying is, and that's just one example, those are the examples that are in Murphy Street, in Reed Street I should say, without going any further. So I'm just wondering, is it possible for the council to look at having proper names so that when people are talking about, I want to meet you there at that lane or on that corner, or if there's some other issue, that they know where you're talking about.
Thanks, John. Marcus?
Yeah, thanks, John. I think you'll actually find it is now called Curtis Lane due to an application to rename that lane. Certainly, we welcome the public with suggestions for lane names, particularly ones that aren't currently named, and we would go through our standard process of assessing those. The process is very much around the relevance to that name, and I think that Curtis Lane is a good example of one where we had a quite significant family to Wangaratta who owned a shop on that corner for a significant period of time. So I'm certainly happy to receive submissions from the community on their thoughts around naming lanes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other questions from the gallery?
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor Russell.
are the lanes actually named? Do you have a sign on those lanes to say what they are?
I thought there was going to be one for Curtis Lane. It was going to go up there on the side wall or something, Marcus?
Yeah, correct. There is one going up for Curtis Lane. we need to remember that even after council makes the decision to name the lane, there's obviously a community consultation process, and then there's a gazetting process that actually takes quite a bit of time before we get to the point where we can actually install the signs.
Because my understanding of the question from Mr. Griffiths was to have a name on the lane so you can, you know you're actually at the right lane.
There are a number of unnamed lanes in the CBD, which I think is mostly what Mr. Griffith was referring to, so that might be something we'll have to look at whether we pick up as a project, but I want to talk about that with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good. Thanks, Councillor Russell. So if there's no further questions from the gallery, ladies and gentlemen, it's currently, is that 7:54?
Correct.
Declare the council meeting closed. Thank you people online for your attendance. People in the gallery, thank you for being here and being part of this council meeting. My fellow councillors, thank you for your participation. Our corporate management team, thank you. And enjoy